All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Mark Rinaldi. For those of you who don't know me, product manager here at Oracle for EPBCS. Most of you probably know me and have worked with me with the hybrid BSO preview program that we have for partners that just concluded. So we're about to start the reports 2.0. I will again say that we are recording this. Also remind you that this is for partners only. Or Oracle personnel. So if there are any customers who have joined the call, this is not for you at this point in time. You can certainly work with your partners for any information related to this program, but this is a partner-only event. So if you are a customer and you are on the call, please let me know and we can have a brief chat. But again, I think this is for partners only. We are going to run through a slide deck here. I think we've got an hour scheduled. Don't know that it will take that long. Again, we will post this recording on the Slack channel as well as the presentation once we are done. At this point, this is going to be led by Shankar Viswanathan and Dave Roberts. I will speak a bit about the program at the beginning, but first I just wanted to introduce the two of them. Most of you probably know them also, but I'll give them a moment to introduce themselves as well. And Dave, if you want to get started with the presentation, I think we can. But just before maybe we do that, if there's anyone who thinks they're in the wrong place, let me know. But again, reports 2.0 for PBCS, EPBCS. With that, Dave, Shankar, I'll let you guys start off here.
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Dave Roberts. I'm product manager for some of the reporting products at Hyperion, including financial reporting, SmartView, and enterprise performance reporting.
Hi, this is Shankar Viswanathan. I'm part of the planning, product management, and also handle the EPM platform. I think we also have other development and PM representatives from EPM. Al is on, Mark is on, Prasad's on. So I think most people in the partner community know these guys. So just to let you guys know, so any of us would be able to address any questions you guys come up with. The whole idea here is to make sure we have an open communication on issues and which you guys come up with and concerns, and so that we can address them over the period of the preview.
All right, so I think everyone has the safe harbor statement probably memorized at this point, since we are talking about futures. Program agenda, we're going to do a quick, or Shankar will do a quick intro to preview. We'll walk through an overview of reporting, feature summary, demo, talk about a preview scope, I believe actually, and then some additional resources and Q&A at the end. Go ahead, Shankar.
So actually, I think this is going to be me, right?
Yeah, gets you. Yeah, that's Mark.
So again, for those of you who are on this call, I think just about every one of you, if not all of you, were part of the hybrid BSO partner preview program. So it's going to be pretty much the same logistics. Most of you are using the same pod that you had been using for the hybrid BSO program. There were a couple of you that had multiple pods because you were testing multiple client applications in that preview program. In most cases, we have removed access to the additional pods for you. Some of you, including a couple of you who asked for additional pods, have asked for an extension on the hybrid BSO program. So for those of you, those pods that you had still are on the hybrid BSO release, the 18.10.98. So that is still active. So for those of you who didn't already have an additional pod and are also part of this Reports 2.0 program, I have provisioned you for a new pod as well. So some of you may have two pods, one being on the hybrid BSO branch, and then the other one being on this Reports 2.0 branch. I did send out all of those provisioning emails. Well, Oracle Cloud would have, it's just the sender. You should have received those this morning. I did update your Slack private channel with your new pod for Reports 2.0. If you feel like you did not get access to a pod or an environment or any information that you think you should have, reach out to me on Slack. We will be using the same Slack channel for all communications. So again, at this point, it's still called Hyperion-Hybrid, but we can continue on with this for the all communications. So still same private channels or new if you're newly added to the program. The general channel is for general communications. One point on this, We had a lot of feedback from most of you in the questionnaires that you thankfully responded to. We appreciate all of that, again, from the hybrid program. Many of you commented that you wished there were more communications from other partners on the general channel, yet your follow-up comment was, but I guess I didn't do that either. So keep in mind, people like hearing from other partners what's going on. Clearly, if you've got a confidential item or a customer-specific issue you don't want to raise for the whole program to see, that's what your private channel is for. I think with this Reports 2.0 channel, there's less confidentiality because we don't, you're just testing reporting as opposed to any kind of specifics with your customer applications, with data integrity, things of that sort that were unique maybe to the hybrid BSO program. So I encourage you, based on your own feedback, to use the general channel a little bit more when you're finding issues, so that way other people are aware of the issues that are coming across and any resolutions to those. But again, the private channels are there if you really feel like there's something that's unique to that particular, to your testing that you're going through. So if we could do that, we do like to hear feedback frequently. Just make sure we know that you are testing it, and you're, whether it's good or bad. Obviously, no news is normally considered good news, but we like to hear good news as well, because I do get updates that people like Prasad ask me about, in weekly meetings, how's the testing going? So if I don't hear from you, I don't know. And again, I think Dave and Shankar will be monitoring these Slack channels a little bit more because they're more the experts on this. So just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of that. Again, only trying to avoid emails. I will also make one more plug to use Slack in its intended fashion. Once you have a thread started, if you want to reply to it, don't just do another thread below it. The main page shouldn't be treated like IM. Each thread itself, there's a start a thread comment icon that you can choose to do your replies to, so that way it keeps the home page cleaner, especially on that general channel. All of the existing pods were switched to Reports 2.0 last night. They were completely wiped clean, so a recreate service was performed on those. So anything that you had as part of the hybrid BSO program is gone at this point, or should be. I ask that if something isn't, we're all professionals here, that we do have non-disclosure agreements. Anything that you shouldn't see, please delete or let us know if you find something untoward, or if the application somehow is still there. Again, it shouldn't be, from what I've checked. The provisioning for the users, the same users that were provisioned for those pods are still there unless your pod was taken away from you. But if there's someone in the program from the hybrid BSO testing that you don't want to continue on, you need to let me know via Slack that you want me to remove anybody. I am aware of a couple of people who are on this call that are in new organizations as of this time. I did remove provisioning from your old organization pod and created your new ones. But again, if anyone is concerned about that, let me know. Again, as I mentioned to start the program, the new provisioning for the net new users, new pods were sent earlier today. Hopefully you've already seen those. The next slide for me, please, Dave. The current version that you should see out there on these pods is 1901.43. I believe, and I'll let Dave confirm this, and Shankar, I believe it's just PBCS and ePBCS apps for now, and I think they might have a slide on that later. So again, no FCCS, TRCS, any of the other things right now. An LCM will import from 1812 or 1901, or you can obviously create a new app from scratch. You're testing the reporting here, so don't know that you really need to bring in existing apps. Just a reminder, hybrid BSO applications that were on the 18.1098 or any of those other ones, those LCMs will fail, partly because we only support months in arrears, but also the hybrid enablement is going to fail. So please do not even attempt to take your hybrid BSO application LCM and import it for this purpose. It's just not applicable at this point in time. The mentioned Slack channel for any change of provisioning requests. I do want to make sure that the users that are going to be provisioned are on Slack before I will provision. So if I have to send out, at this point, any previous emails that I sent with a link for an invitation to Slack, those expire after 30 days, so those are no longer good. So via Slack, private channel, say I need to add X, Y, or Z with their email address, and I will send a specific invitation directly to them from Slack. Once I see them on Slack, then I will provision anybody else. But again, I think we have pretty much everyone provisioned at this point. Again, We would request that you monitor the general channel for the program updates, again, because we're not sending out emails. I suggest you set your notifications in Slack to receive all new messages. And there is an option to send, to select just if mentions, but again, the program updates about, hey, we're doing a patch because we found a bug, make sure you back up. If you're not getting those, I don't want to have anybody lose any work that they're doing there. So under preferences, notifications, there's an option to set it for all new messages. And I think that is everything from a general introduction perspective. Next slide, just to confirm that, please, Dave.
Yes, perfect.
Yep. All right. So any questions on the program in general at this point in time? All right. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave. It sounds like I get some feedback. I don't know if that's you, Dave. If I notice any noise, I might mute you manually. So if you need to, actually, I'm going to mute everybody that isn't scheduled to speak. So if you want to say anything, just be sure to unmute yourself via Zoom chat. All right, Dave, on to you.
Great, thanks, Mark. So just kind of quick introduction, what we'll cover here, and everything in more detail coming up. But essentially, we're going to talk about management reporting integrated into the EPM Cloud platform, right? So similar to for any of you that have used management reporting in EPRCS, same features and functionality. Only differences are it's now embedded within your PBCS or EPBCS instance, and a few other differences which we'll cover. Mainly around artifact security, POV are all managed through the EPM Cloud platform. For PBCS and EPBCS, FR is going to continue to be available kind of going forward for the foreseeable future. It's not like we're going to pull it at some point. As we'll cover a little bit later, there's still some FR parity features we need to add to reporting, and then we'll have some type of long grace period after that. It's not like we're going to drop FR within 6 months or anything along those lines. The one thing to note is that FR with the work that was done took a couple of years for Web Studio as well as the new charting engine. We had some additional development staff for that. So once that work has been done, really no major enhancements or architectural changes at this point. We're still adding maybe a little couple settings, minor settings here and there, or properties, but I wouldn't expect any kind of large new features. As kind of the management reporting of the reporting framework is really the strategic direction going forward. So let's look at an overview of management reporting. So management reporting is more of a cloud-based solution for creating I should say next generation, your EPM cloud-based financial management reports. So users can insert charts and grids and text boxes and essentially run highly formatted reports going against your EPM cloud sources. If you are using EPRCS, there's some additional sources you could point to, cover that in a second. So this is included, management reporting has actually been included with Enterprise Performance Reporting Cloud for, I think, the past 2.5 years, and it is going to be included in some of your select EPM Cloud solutions. So management reporting and EPRCS, so the main couple selling points or differentiators here is that it's really a cross-cloud reporting hub within EPRCS that allows you to write reports against multiple cloud sources, which not only include EPM Cloud, but as well as OACS-based and ERP Financials Cloud. Okay, so I can pull in content from any of those sources, multiple sources within grids and charts within one report. And then the other main selling point is it's really integrated with the collaborative narrative reporting process within EPRCS. So in other words, your narrative report packages, I can embed grids and charts in Word or PowerPoint documents, or if I'm using a PDF-based report package, I can include entire reports. And that, if I do have printable pages set up in a POV for a report, it does do some simple cascading. Again, that would be in the PDF-based report package. Reporting in EPM Cloud, so management reporting from EPRCS is going to be introduced as kind of in reports within EPM. That new reporting framework is, I think it's now included with the sales planning cloud offering, and FR is not included in that since it is a net new product. And it will be introduced in some of the remaining EPM Cloud products in some of the future releases, such as PBCS, EPBCS, and FCCS. And this is accessible through the reports card, but it's the default tab at the very top, includes the management reports. The second tab is for FR. And one of the things we're doing from a standpoint of migration for existing FR reports, that's targeted for Q2 of 2019. That's kind of in phase 2 of this program. All right, let's talk about a feature summary. So, so this is things that you might be familiar with. Standard, easy to use drag and drop interface for designing and editing reports. I can insert different report objects such as grids, charts, text boxes, and images, edit them, set properties for them, and put them into a report. One of the things to note that, any kind of FR kind of like features that we'll talk about going forward are typically expanded upon and kind of have new design paradigms that are just done overall better. I think as some of the folks on the phone that have used management reporting already, all the feedback from partners and customers who've used it so far is that they really absolutely love it over FR. One example of this is I could design and preview the results of an individual grid or chart. So if I want to see that output, I don't have to run the entire report. So here's kind of the chart designer view. I could go ahead and preview it and see what the data actually looks like. Other features you might be already familiar with. I could use formulas and text functions. Those text functions can retrieve report information and grid content into text boxes or text rows or columns. From a charting standpoint, the first two bullet points are what FR has. Remaining items are what are available in the new reporting framework. Some of the highlights are the waterfall chart, scatter, and bubble charts. As I think I have coming up on a roadmap slide coming up a little bit later, we do plan on adding some additional chart types later this year. If you do have some feedback on additional chart types, please let us know through the Slack channel. Just really keeping in mind a couple things. One is it kind of more strategic in nature, something that could be used by multiple customers versus something that one customer thought was a nice to have from some obscure product they might have used before that might not really benefit anything else. And the reason I bring that up is that a lot of times when we add new chart types, some of them are pretty standardized from a standpoint of user interface and properties and implementation, but adding entirely new or different things like a geo chart where you might have to map members to geographic location, something that involves like a lot of additional work. That's something that it requires additional development resources and things like that to think out. So it's love to hear some additional feedback on that and what some of the use cases might be. From a standpoint of other report designer features, so dynamic member selection functions that folks are used to, not only quick select on individual members like children or descendants. One thing we've added in here, which I think was not available in any of the products, I think maybe in HFM before, we could have bottom level members of a parent. And so not only your hierarchical functions, but other things like range and relative member to do things like your rolling reports. Also support your substitution variables, things like lists, which are generations and levels, and also saved selections where I can save a selection only within a report for reuse, similar to the save as function or same as function in FR, where I could reuse prompts elsewhere. The nice thing with saved selections is I could use those in multiple grids across a report. So define a prompt once and use it for member selections in other grids. Other things like text functions to pull in content into text boxes or text rows or columns. The one thing we've improved on too is we have a text function building wizard. So I could just select a text function and where applicable, some of the parameters like the grid it applies to, whatever dimension it applies to, and get it added. And then some of the last items, more data source type items. So if I have cell text or file attachments, we support those through the cell text function as well as drilling into a file attachment. Financial intelligence we always refer to as anything that recognizes account type. So things like variance or variance percent formulas or conditional formatting, which is conditional formatting suppression. Things like user-defined attributes and attributes. So exposed in 3 places. First 2 FR does, third one is new to MR, which is the member property member selection function, where I could select members based on UDAs or associated attributes. Second, the member property text function to return the value of those. And third, again, new to MR, is I could do conditional formatting or suppression kind of based on that. And then lastly, drill to source data. So if I do have my cube built based on data management, I could do a drill through the source data, similar like I can today in FR report, Smart View, forms and so on. If you are using EPRCS within Fusion or EPRCS within MR and connecting to Fusion, you could drill back to transactional. So that's all supported. And then I'd like to roll through, just real quick, some report designer features. Not going to get into a lot of detail here, but one of the things with prompts is that we've added new is the ability to allow or disallow having multiple selections. I could also leave the choices list or default selection blank, which you couldn't do in FR. And the other nice thing we do is that if you do make selections in the prompt, those selections are saved for the same session that you're using. So you don't have to reset them every time you do, or reselect them every time you do with FR. Conditional formatting and suppression, kind of an expanded user interface, some additional conditions, allow you to do some of the stoplighting type stuff. Other things like zoom on parent. So instead of expansions, we call this zoom. And also drill with content. So similar to related content, I could drill to another report, a URL, or another object within the library that's published. So let's talk about some improved design paradigms. So one of the things that we've done, for example, compared to FR, where in FR, if you define conditional formatting or define related content on one or more cells, if you wanted to add those or set those up on other cells, you essentially had to recreate them. The nice thing is with conditional formatting suppression, for example, you can assign names to those conditional formats and then select another cell or cells and just check the checkbox and apply them. So you set them up once, apply them to where else you want in the report. Same thing with drill to content. You have a description or name related to those. You can click on another cell, click on the checkbox, easy to reuse. Other things like zoom. So instead of just expanding the children, you could select either children, descendants, or bottom. And then within the designer, you could select specific parent segments to drill into, or you could enable it for the entire grid, or you can enable what's called ad hoc mode, which is essentially the end user can define which level they want to drill through and kind of where they want the parent to appear before or after. So some additional features, just like anything with zoom or expansions, you want to design your reports accordingly so you don't have end users trying to drill on a parent with like 10,000 children, then complaining it takes too long, and so on. Real quick, other design features, the ability to add additional physical pages or sheets, and we'll see this in the demo. So there's no longer a page break after for a grid or chart. You set those up and position those on separate sheets. If you have multiple members in the rows and columns, you don't have to close the dialog and reopen it for each dimension in a row or column. You could all do that through tabs at the very top. One big difference for charting in FR, if you created a chart, it had to be sourced from a grid that was in the report. So you might have a bunch of hidden grids. Recently saw one with a customer report with 10 hidden grids. The nice thing now is you can create a chart that's based on a grid that's embedded with the chart that does not display on the report. Okay, so define it completely separately. Other items, snap and resize report objects to guidelines, similar like you might be used to in PowerPoint to line things up. Automatic grid grow banding. I could reorder and hide POV dimensions. So if you are working in models or cubes that have a larger number of POV dimensions, like possibly EPBCS or FCCS, or if you're in EPRCS going against Fusion, and you have 12 or 15 POV dimensions where most of them have kind of a fixed selection, you could go ahead and lock that down and hide it from being displayed. If you do have multiple data sources, multiple grids within the same report, the POV will automatically try to combine the dimensions and selections across multiple data sources, as long as the dimensions and the members in them are the same. So if you have the same entity or same time period hierarchy, which you would in PBCS or EPBCS, automatically combine those for you if you're pointing to different cubes. Things like grid level, alias table selection, and then a new thing we just added pretty recently is the ability to add a grid title that appears above the grid, and you could have formatting and text functions, and you don't have to do any jury rigging like putting additional text rows and other stuff in to try to get that to work. And then lastly, before the demo, just some report viewer features. We have kind of the concept of preview user POV, so you can select the POV members. It's not done in like a kind of a tiny dialog if you ran the report in the workspace. It just gives you the POV bar at the top. We've already talked about ad hoc zoom mode. As an end user, I could select the default member label. So if I want to show aliases, members, or both, wherever that's exposed in the report, or apply that to the POV, I could select the alias table as an end user. I can switch between HTML or PDF, download the report as PDF, save it as a snapshot to the folder in the repository. Some of these other, the drill stuff we've already talked about. And then lastly, if you do have a large HTML report, there's automatic optimized scrolling for it. So I know FR, sometimes there are some challenges with larger reports. This has been optimized, obviously like usual, the caveat of that doesn't mean you want to go ahead and create a 75,000 row HTML report if you could possibly use it somehow. And then just some of the kind of the differences. So if you have used EPRCS or management reporting in EPRCS, some of the differences and how things are managed in EPM Cloud platform. So again, it's not, we don't have a separate library. These are all kind of stored in a reports folder where you can select reports and accessible from the reports card. As an end user, you can open an HTML or PDF, edit reports if you have the right user role. So there's not a concept of an EPRCS library here. Other items, the access control to the reports is managed on the reports card. So there's no, if you want to set up access permissions, it's not like FR where you go to the Explorer workspace. Similar roles as with FR, so power user for report design, user role for report viewing. And then to move content between environments, you use the standard EPM Cloud lifecycle management. There's not a EPRCS export of items. And I believe the LCM for reports is under the app or cube name in the general folder. There's a separate thing for reports there. It's not in the, there's a separate document repository, I think, that contains the FR reports. So those of you who've used EPRCS with management reporting, used to setting up kind of a data source connection that defines a data source and server and credentials and so on. You don't have to do that in EPM Cloud since everything's on the same box. So those data sources are automatically created based on the application cubes that are available on that instance. So no need to manually set those up or manage them. That does mean you can only utilize the cubes that are on the same EPM Cloud instance. You can't point to other cloud instances. That's more what EPRCS is used for. And then you could change the data source that a grid uses in the Grid Designer Properties panel. And then kind of last cloud platform type item is the global POV used in the report is integrated with the EPM Cloud POV most recently used. So if you preview a report, pulls back the MRU members that you might have used previously, like on a former dashboard. If you change those while you're previewing the report, those will get kind of written back to the MRU list. And then last item, again, just another difference from EPRCS. So if you have, so from a font standpoint, like we always have, we expose the fonts that are on the Linux cloud box. So if you have Windows fonts like Times New Roman, Sans Serif, Wingding, stuff like that, while there are for some of the Linux fonts some alternatives that are similar, if you want those specific fonts, you do need to upload those. And that's done while in the report designer, there's a gear action menu where you can go ahead and upload fonts. The managed transforms is really used with tax reporting for the XML output if you need some custom XML mapping. So I'm not going to really cover that here. And then last item, just want to show is the navigation flow support. So these new report artifacts are supported through the EPM navigation flows similar to FR. So you can put them in within cards, vertical or horizontal tabs. And the integrated business process flows also support the new reports. Okay. Before I get into the demo, does anyone have any questions? I know it's kind of ran through a lot in a short period of time.
And just make sure I muted most of you. I didn't want to mute all because I didn't want to mute Dave mid-sentence there, but you may need to unmute yourself, which if you're using the app or the desktop, it should be easy enough to click on the participants and just unmute yourself. I can quickly unmute all, which I've just done, so that way in case anybody wants to ask any questions, they can.
Hi, this is Imran. I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, just a quick question. This is going to be built in, like when someone gets PBCS or ePBCS, this capability, this function is going to be built in. You don't have to get an additional add-on to get it.
That's correct. That will be included, but that will be, obviously won't be GA until a future release.
Yeah, so I think, Dave, just to add, just to clarify that level setting, right? Essentially what we are doing is everything Dave showed is part of the management reporting feature sets within EPRCS already available. We have embedded that functionality within the core platform itself so that you can have that as a alternative right now for FR for any application specific reporting needs. So it'll be in the future, we expect this to be your reporting interface in place of FR going forward, right? For now, we will have it in tandem. You'll have FR and reports 2.0 as Mark described inside of the application for creating reports. So
that's perfect. Just one more. Yeah, just one more to clarify. So whoever already has EPBCS or PBCS, once this upgrade patch comes, they will also be able to see it, right?
Correct. Yeah. So once this is GA, anybody who has PBCS, EPBCS, or and eventually also FCCS, TRCS, all those products, applications will see that.
Zoom in, you'll be able to choose.
So there are a couple of questions coming in through the Zoom chat. Kim was asking about Excel exports of reports, Dave.
Yeah, I'll cover that in more detail coming up, but the short answer is we're slowly, slowly rolling in the MR and office integration standpoint. So EPRCS, as of this month, has via SmartView the import to ad hoc grid. We're adding import to fully formatted soon, as well as some export capability. And that all that will be kind of rolled into, right now it's only part of the EPRCS SmartView add-on, but that will be rolled into the platform coming up as well. Other questions I see, can we migrate existing FR reports to management reporting? That capability is in EPRCS. We did have a point, I think, on a previous slide that that is coming kind of Q2 this year with the EPM platform. So we'll be part of that testing. Another one, kind of reporting.
Just to clarify on that, so that's going to be a patch that we apply during this partner preview program at some point and that's why you want to pay attention to Slack. We'll say that that's now available. So right now, the pod you have access to will not convert an FR to a reports 2.0/MR report. You have to create them from scratch, but we will add that during the preview program during our phase 2 of that.
And then a couple other questions. Kind of reporting requirement, public sector display the reports in parent-child format. I'm not sure if that means the actual members on the page have the totals first, parents first and children after that. That's not currently available. I don't know if that doesn't answer your question, please clarify. Other questions, parity items like AutoCalc batch scheduling, I have that coming up on separate slides, so I'll cover that for the demo. And then one other one, integrate MR into Planning Cloud task lists at some point or close manager. I don't know if Shankar or Mark, if you could address that.
Yeah, I was trying to answer that too on the chat, but basically, yes, we will cover that as part of the parity items for FR, because eventually we'll need to cover off anything which FR people were doing with FR for migration from on-prem. So yeah, that'll be part of our parity checklist.
All right.
Any other quick questions before we go into the demo?
All right, I'm about to mute everybody, so hold on a second, Dave, before you start talking, because I'm going to unmute you and I'll unmute Shankar, but everyone else I'm going to mute everybody just to get rid of background noise. Give me a second.
All right.
All right, Dave, I believe you are unmuted, so if you want to just, and Shankar, you are unmuted.
Okay, Mark, can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool, you can hear me now. So here we are in PBCS, had the Vision app rolling on, so click on the reports card. So again, this has the new reports framework on the top, FR reports on the bottom. This just has kind of a list of some reports. So one of the things you'll notice is have a list of some reports. As a report designer, I could, or as an end user, I could run an HTML or PDF, and then I have some actions on the side. As a designer, I could assign my permissions and do things like edit or delete. create new reports. Top left, I could search on specific items, filter based on specific folders in the library, or filter on either reports or snapshot reports. So I'm going to open one of these reports just in HTML real quick. This revenue by territory. So kind of preview user POV is set kind of by default. So I could pick my POV, click on the play button, and this pulls up the content. So just standard logo, text box, chart, grid. And then within the report designer, if I'm a report designer, I can always click on the edit button to pull up the report design palette. On the far left side is where I can add the additional sheets. So if I want to insert objects or move them over here to have them on separate physical pages, I can. And again, text box with some text functions, grid, chart, properties panel. I'll get into this in a little bit more detail just during the demo. Creating a new report from scratch. And then last one to open is just the income statement trend. So this is kind of a rolling report using the range and relative member functions. I have July selected up top, so if I preview this, just give me the income statement in the row, and I have actual through June. For whatever reason, July is missing from here, but to get the point, I'll have to take a look at that. Plan kind of going forward. All right. I think maybe there wasn't any data in that column. All right, so let's go ahead and create a new report. So click on Create. This pulls up the report designer, and we start you out with kind of a startup with just one grid within there. We can see the snap to grid lines, which I could resize or snap to essentially if I want. And then properties panel on the right side. General properties for the report is just things like page setup options. And then for a selected item in the report, I have some of my layout options, such as sizing and placement and so on. I'm going to go ahead and set up the grid. So this gives me a list of all data sources on your box. So I'm going to choose the Vision Plan 1. And this will start me off in a new grid. We typically have the time periods, dimension, the columns, accounts, and the rows, POV sections at the very top. I have kind of a formula bar up here, which I could do things like member selection, specify formulas and text functions. And then the properties panel on the right. So things like general properties, like some defaults for the rows and column lists, how I handle text options and suppression and member labels. And then if I select a row or column, I can edit the row or column properties, cell properties for formatting. I have sorting, conditional properties for conditional formatting, suppression. And last, the drill to content is where to find links to other reports, so similar to related content. So let's go ahead and kind of create this report. I'm going to click on the target button for dimension layouts. It's going to have an overlay. And in this case, I'm just going to put drag product to the row. Let me try that again. There we go. And I'm going to put account up at the top and get rid of the overlay. And I'm going to go ahead and select some members. So if I click on product, you'll notice one thing is I can open up member selection either from here. I could also type in members, which I'll do shortly. And this is also where I set what gets displayed. So the default for the grid, either member, alias, both, or some kind of custom heading. Let's go ahead and select members. I'm going to uncheck product. The one thing we'll note is I have kind of a quick pick for some of the commonly used hierarchical functions, bottom, children, descendants. I means inclusive. And then in the drop-down list below, I have recents, things like all my functions, things like range and relative member, substitution variables, and then lists for my generations and levels. Saved selections, again, are similar to that same as function where I could save a prompt and apply it elsewhere. I'm just going to handpick members in this case, so I'll drill into the hierarchy a little bit. And then I'm going to pick the total and drop these in. And then for period, just to speed it up, I'm just going to type these in manually. All right. And then I'm also going to separate these columns. For example, if I wanted to chart them differently or format them differently, and I'm going to do the same with the rows. And then maybe right before the total column, I'm going to insert a separator column. So I'll say insert before separator. I could also insert rows or columns for data, formula, or text. And then, so I actually get data. I'm going to set the POV. So sorry, just bear with me on it. Luckily, there aren't too many dimensions. So maybe I want to lock this down at base data and then hide it. So one of my POV options I could say is hide dimension. Account, I'm just going to select net income. Year, I'm going to pick FY15 and FY16. Scenario plan, I'll keep that displayed. Version, working. Maybe I want to keep that hidden. And then lastly, for entity, I'm going to pick a couple. I think for net income, there's only, from a data population standpoint, I think it's only sales, so I'll keep those two. And then one thing I could also do, so we don't really have the concept of a page dimension like FR did, but if I do want to print the same report for multiple pages across a dimension, I'll just select print all selection. So I can pick this if I'm viewing an HTML, or it drops in PDF separate pages. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and preview just the grid. So again, it pulls up the preview for the grid. Notice how some of these are disabled. I can always pick between FY15 and FY16 if I want. Same thing with entity. Let's apply some quick formatting. So I'm going to highlight those items, click on the cell properties panel, and I'm just going to add, make that bold. I'm going to go back to the grid, and I'm going to enable row banding. And I can change the color if I want. And then lastly, maybe I want some underlines and overlines. So I'll go back to cell formatting and border. And I'll do a top and a bottom. And maybe I want my bottom to be a double underlined. Okay. Quick preview. Looks good. Got my banding. Just with the time we have, I'm just going to insert like a quick chart. And I'm going to resize this a little bit. If I do setup chart, I can create a new grid that lives with the chart based on an existing model, or I'm just going to create an existing grid. A few things with charting. On the right side is the properties panel, where I could pick from one of the various types that we have here. I also have additional tabs for the plot area, legend, axes, chart options, things like that. And then I have the 3 tabs at the top. This just gives you a general presentation of what the chart looks like without data. Chart data is where I select which items from the grid get included. So I'll pick all 4 quarters and those 3 products. If I want to edit or view the grid or do anything with the grid, I could do that here too. And we'll do a quick preview of the chart. Looks nice. Close it. And then last thing I want to do is just add a quick text box at the very top. And I'll expand that out. And in my text editor, I might call this Vision Corp. And maybe I want to insert a text function to pull back the POV, maybe the member alias for the entity. So I'm going to pick entity, select, it drops it in, and maybe I'll say for, and I'll do the same thing for the year selection. All right, let's format this, make it center, make this bold. I'm going to bounce up the font size, close. And then lastly, if I wanted to kind of position that and center down the report, do this. And let's preview that. Okay, I can switch between different departments. Notice how the box up top will reflect kind of what I'm pulling up. And that kind of concludes the demo, just in the amount of time we have. We'll have a question and answer section at the end where we could roll through some of those additional items, but just want to roll through a few more slides here. So preview scope. I don't know, Marcus Shankar, if you wanted to cover this.
Yeah, I can touch on that, Dave. Basically, I think we have already mentioned this earlier on in the presentation that the initial phase of the preview is for you guys to test the core functionality of MR within the platform. Just all the stuff which Dave showcased is what you would test out. Now, I don't know how many of you, maybe we can do a raise hands polling, Mark, in terms of how many are familiar with MR functionality. But for those who are not, then they would be new to this testing in terms of what they're seeing, right? So that will be continuing till we introduce the FR transition into reports. So that's where you would start testing out FR reports migration to the new reports framework. We still will confirm with development and update you through Slack on when that build would be available for you to start testing that path. Right now, we are estimating that to be early March. So we'll update you on that one. So I think, and from a product standpoint, I would focus on PBCS, ePBCS for now, because those are paths which we are already certified from a QE standpoint. So it's ready to go for you guys to pick up and test and bring out any issues which you see. At the core of it, basically, I think if it's not clear for somebody, we have basically brought in MR functionality inside the platform, so it should function consistent with what it does in EPRCS. That's, I think.
I have sent out a poll there, so if you're not active on Zoom there, so you should see it. You should have seen a poll window jump up at you.
Okay, nobody from Oracle answers, I guess.
I don't know.
Unless you really want to.
Never heard of it. I like that. One person, never heard of it.
All right. So kind of what's coming and known issues. I know Microsoft Office integration was asked about. Import Excel as ad hoc is available in EPRCS in the Smart View EPRCS extension. We plan on rolling that through to cloud platform over the next few months. I don't have any dates on that yet, but next 2 to 3 I'd expect. Same with fully formatted. So that's the import standpoint. Export the report kind of from the report while you're viewing it to ad hoc or fully formatted is planned over the next few months as well. That's all Excel stuff. Word and PowerPoint are probably are going to follow in a later release, most likely second half of the year. We've already talked about FR to MR migration. A couple other items that are kind of coming up in the EPRCS release, also soon to be rolled into EPM Cloud. One is notes. So this is meant to be more to be able to add or create formatted narrative text based on that's POV based, but different from annotations, which were completely free form. It's more set up as a note box, so kind of a textual data entry form that's tied to a POV. So if you have a budget book or some kind of internal management report that has the same format, but you need to collect text or narrative text for 100 departments, and every report looks the same. I have a grid followed by a performance summary text, followed by a chart, followed by a variance explanation text. You could set that up in an MR report. The user runs it, sets up their POV, types in the text and submits it. That gets stored with the report and you can run it. Some additional features planned beyond that, but that's coming up over the next few months. And then the ability to have the concept of hidden grids. And while we do have hidden grids with charts, just the ability, and we'll expose that through a hidden sheet, where I can create a grid that maybe, if I have multiple grids that I want to combine into one, I want to source some grids and refer them by a formula in another grid. I could hide those originals. Other parity items, and this is probably more the past the 4 or 5 months type framework. Auto calculations and grouping. We're probably not going to have all the crazy types of calcs we did in FR, like average and min and max. Probably more like totaling and subtotaling to set that up. Cascading in books. So with EPRCS report package, especially in PDF, you can do some of that today, but to have more of an ad hoc where similar to like someone runs a report, they would run a book, pick their POV, and then run their 5 reports across that POV, things like that. We do have a simple book concept coming up within EPRCS over the next few months. It will also expose in the EPM Cloud. They'll allow you to do that. That's more interactive. You can have a table of contents, Word and PDF documents in it, but not with the narrative workflow that an EPRCS report package has. Other things like scheduling and automation, that's more of second half this year, where I can do scheduling and bursting, emails and all that good stuff. Saved and linked objects, so if I want to save a grid or text box or chart and reuse it across reports, that's planned. Row and column templates, still kind of on the fence on that. I know some customers use them and still hate them. There are some limitations on them, so that's probably a lower priority for later in the year. We'd have to kind of think about how we want to do that if we do it. Butterfly reports, which you can't do natively today, where you do have the member labels in the middle of the report, data on the side. You can do that today by adding a text column and using member functions and hiding the original member label. So there's a way around it, but it's something that's also planned. And then lastly, additional chart types, as I mentioned earlier. So we saw the user POV, preview user POV preference where I clicked on the play button. There is a preference for that for reports. One of the things we found is that if you check it or uncheck it, you have to actually restart the browser to get it to stick. So that's one thing you want to take note of. It does work supposedly, just you have to restart the browser to do it. It's something we're working on a fix for, and to turn it off by default. Right now it's on by default. Quick on additional resources and Q&A. So you know, we'll be posting a PDF of this PowerPoint deck, but we have the designer guide and user guide. Again, the functionality of creating reports is exactly the same as an EPRCS. Just the differences are the one I've highlighted on those 4 or 5 slides about access control and different user types and stuff like that. Just like the other EPM Cloud products, we have the videos, and I have a link on the EPRCS page, but the short 2 to 5 minute videos, whether they're overviews or simple tasks like how to create a chart, things like that. And then one thing that's new, kind of the EPM world, is the concept of learning paths. So while the documentation, so if you think about a designer guide that has like working with reports, working with grids, and working with charts, and explanations and procedures for specific items, the learning path really ties everything together. Is how do I design a report from start to finish? So it has kind of a step-by-step tutorial with some screenshots. There's samples you could use, or you could adapt it to the app or cube that you're working on. It also does have links to the documentation and videos as you go along. So if you're selecting members, you want to find out more information about selecting members, you can click on doc or video links to go from there. But it's kind of like a step-by-step online tutorial type thing for some of these tasks. All right, let's open up for Q&A. I know we're running close to the top of the hour here.
So there are some in the chat. I'll unmute everybody at this point, or you might mute yourself. You manually mute yourself, but there are some on the chat. I'll just start off just to get you around up where we are, Dave, here. But someone's asking, is there a way to dynamically have a row in different color? I mean, I think the row banding was your shading, right? I don't know. If that's
yes. Yeah, that'd be the automatic banding. We do have the ability to like not apply banding to certain rows, things like that. Smart feed open up MI reports. I think we already covered that. It's coming up. Sorting functionality in reports on dimensions by member name or alias. We don't have that as of yet, kind of planned for future release. Neat feature in PowerPoint where charts can be updated by clicking refresh button. That would be more with the MS Office integration. Data source options are only the cubes that are on that pod, and that is what we're separating from EPRCS. That's correct. So if you do want reports that pull in content from multiple cloud products, you do need the EPRCS for that. This functionality is only for the data sources on that same box. And I think those were all the questions in the Zoom chat. Are there any additional questions? If you want to either unmute yourself or add to the Zoom chat.
So one thing which I noticed, Dave, Mark, is that in the polling which Mark did, seemed to be a high percentage of people who have not heard of it or have not used MR. So Dave, you want to just reiterate the resources available to those folks so that they can get familiar with MR functionality if they're starting from scratch?
Yeah, this is just
if the PDF doesn't have a hyperlink on that, because I don't know when you convert these to PDF if that hyperlink will be clickable, I'll put those hyperlinks directly in the Slack, or Dave can. We'll make sure the links to those documents are in the Slack general channel if they're not part of the PDF, already, and are clickable out of the PDF.
Mark, when is that going to be available on Slack?
I will post that momentarily.
Okay.
Hi, David. I've got a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So with respect to report bursting and sending out emails, like, is there any update on that? Can we send the reports from the application as attachments through emails?
We don't. I mean, we do have the bursting and scheduling planned, most likely for second half of this year.
Got it.
I have one other question, unrelated to MR. I thought I read somewhere MR report output for books and bursting will allow for Excel output, not just PDF. Let it be available on the roadmap. That is still under consideration. That's something we can accommodate. We'll plan for it, but otherwise not. Again, still under consideration. Other questions?
About the program in general, anything? I mean, again, we've got Slack, so again, start using it, use the general channel a little bit more often than your private channel.
I think the general guideline. I think the general guideline for folks especially who have never used MR before, is to try to do everything we're familiar with doing in FR, and then let us know what you are unable to do or would like to do.
And then there's one other item: better have functions similar in forms. For example, selection of level 0 members is level 0 descent. So that is available using the bottom function. We looked at that a little bit earlier. So I could select the bottom function. Will give me level 0 or bottom level members of a parent. Other questions?
Everyone pumped, ready to go, excited?
Yep.
As always.
All right.
Well, thanks for everyone's time. Again, please utilize the Slack channel to provide any feedback or comments or questions or issues.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll post this recording shortly and the PDF as well. All right.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
All right,
Looking forward to this, guys.
Thank you. Bye now.
Like.
All right.
Thanks, guys.